Okay, our login form is looking a little bit better. That's obviously now that we've added the app icons, it's got a little bit more flavor. It's got a little bit out of position though, so I think it's time we added auto layout to our pages, app pages. Log in and sign up. I just add the auto layout and I want them to be in the center because this is a centered layout, so let's just make sure those are in the center. Okay, so now it's centralized. It's looking a bit better, but like we said previously, we want to make this login button a bit punchier so that it's clear what the user has to do next. So let's do that. Let's jump into our buttons. Oh, Figma's crashed. Here we go. Don't know what happened there. Now, we've got this very default one, and we've got our text variants. Now we're going to have to add another one. Depending on how we want to play this, of course. I mean, there are options. So let's just make a little bit of space here from the heading. Now, we can either have default buttons black or default buttons grey. Now, grey isn't a bad color for a default button because it's not opinionated. A black button or a colored button is opinionated, right? It's loaded with more meaning. So it's good that we leave the default button as grey. Our text button is basically black background, but we need a new one, something that's punchy and one that we're going to link with other colors that we want to call out. So I'm going to call it the accent color, like we previously mentioned with our app icon. We use the accent color which we created, which at the moment is still basically black, to keep it simple. But the accent color is going to be a button which is much more punchy. So we're going to use that color. So the background color is going to use our accent color. That means we're going to have to change the text for the contrast text so we can see it. And the hover state, well, this is where it starts to get a little bit more tricky. We need to expand our color set if we want a different hover pattern. At the moment we had a black hover on the default. Now we might need to update our state pattern, to better handle the logic behind our hover states, and there's more states to come, so we definitely do need a few more colors here. So in order to have a hover over that, we need a new color which is slightly lighter, so it's visible when we hover that it's been activated. So we're going to have to update our color palette here a little bit with a new tone, a little bit lighter than this one. So let's go back to our colors. Let's introduce some new colors. So we have accent base here, and I think what we're going to need to do is add a couple of slightly lighter colors for the hover state. So if I create a color here, and I'm going to call this one accent hover, we're going to need to link a new color. Now, right now, we've only got 50, 19, 10. So we could create new color tokens, or maybe we can just for now use this. It's not the prettiest, but we can fix that at any time by tweaking the architecture of our design system and its values. That's the beauty of the design system. So before building out more colors, let's get on with the end-to-end, which is what this course is all about, an end-to-end how to build design systems via a real app. And we'll get into the weeds when we need to, right? So right now we don't need to get into the weeds of more colors. Let's just use what we've got and let's move on. So now we have accent hover, which is based on palette grey 50. So now what we need to do is add that to our color system. We have color base here. We're going to have to add color accent hover. And there are other ways of doing this, which we will get into when we get further along and we need more colors. There are other intermediate patterns we can use. For now, we're going to use these colors, and then we're going to add an intermediate pattern later on, which means we can control those hovers at a global level. For now, this is good enough. We can easily add it and tweak it later. So that one is good to go. Let's go back to our button, and when we hover, we are going to change the fill to be the hover. There we go. So now it's going to hover to a grey when we hover over the black. Now this isn't beautiful, but we will get to beautiful later. What we want to do now is an end-to-end functional demo of how these pieces fit together. And then of course it's kind of up to the individual how detailed or not the design system architecture is. I'm starting with really basics, but some people do get very complicated about their design systems, and there's pros and cons to that. So the objective here is just to get through end to end. So let's go back to our login form. We want to update the button now. We're going to change it, the type. We've now, we should have another one here, which we didn't add yet. So let's go back to our button. Got distracted talking about design systems. So you see, we've got an error here. Some of them are duplicated, basically. So this one is state default correct, but this is type accent. State default type accent. It's not type state default, it's state hover. So now we have state and type. Now this is a little bit awkward, so I'm going to actually change the order here, and I'm going to put type first and then the state. And you can do that by clicking on the object itself, the button, and you can see. And while I'm here, I'm going to use my convention of using these brackets to show that it's the real deal. This is my button component. Okay, if we go back to our login and sign up form now, we should have it available. Oops, I changed the order. Yes, exactly, that's better. Accent, and this one accent. So now you see how it pops. There we see how this now pops. Let's go to our prototype. Okay, now it's starting to pop. Our accent color is taking shape. You see we have our logo with the accent color, and now the button with the accent color. Now we get into the finesse of branding colors and accent colors later on, but for now our brand and accent colors are the same. Basically our accent color is the brand color effectively, which right now is black to keep it super simple, and we'll get into theming brand colors later. For right now this looks really getting to look good. I'm going to hide this password there, and we wanted to keep it as clean as possible. We've got the username and password written here, so that's okay. Okay, so now we've got an enhanced button. What we do want to add very quickly are some more buttons, which would be social login buttons. Now we can do this quite easily by duplicating our button. For example, let's just hack it in here. Oops, now we've got to hack it into the form. It's very common to try to make a mistake and not go to your component here. We must be very careful of that at all times. So in our layers here, let's just close that down. We have our two logins here, and you see now we should have good practices here. So this is our sign up button. Now you can do this in many ways. In fact, this isn't optimum either. My preferred way personally would be to do something like this, but this is not how. This is very dependent on how other people do it. This way it's quite clear that it's my button component, and it's just well, it will be a login version. This one field, yes. Which one though? Password. This one is field. And let's rename this one to .username. Okay, so now it's a bit more defined, and we always want our fields to be clear for other people to use. So let's do button.login. No, this one is button.signup now, exactly, because we're on a sign up page. And this one is button login. Actually, this is more like back to login. This is just a convention. It's not really a code, the way it would work in the code. It's just file hygiene and cleanliness for you to work with your colleagues. So we wanted to add a few more buttons here. So let's go ahead and do that very quickly by duplicating the bottom button. Right, so it's going to add a button underneath. And let's say this one is login with Google. And we're going to have to make some changes here, right? And let's say we also have another one, which would be, I don't know, login with GitHub. Right, 2 choices. Now, we need to style these, so we can do that shortly. I'm going to make them pop with the accent for now, right? Because we might want to encourage people to use a social sign-up. We get some benefits with that, with the data that's included, and a kind of a verification. So these are always popular. Now, I might not want them to be one on top of the other. So if we do want them to be side by side, we can add an auto layout in those two, call it social logins, right? So we've got some space here, we've got some control over the spacing, and we can change the orientation. So now they're very small, but our login form is quite thin here. Just this is arbitrarily thin, but the width will be set with its container, so we can make it bigger here, just for example. But we must always be aware that this size should be flexible. So now we can actually log in with Google and GitHub here, for example. We're going to have to get some logos to add in here, which means we're going to have to add to our icon set if we want to add the icons here. And I'm going to add a video about libraries for social and logos in a separate video. For now, this is working, and we'll cover adding libraries and plugins in another video where we can add logos to this. But for now, this is looking good. So let's go to our prototype. Okay, so now you see it's still thin here. We've got an arbitrary padding here, and we did not really set this. It's 101, which is a very unusual spacing, right? So what we would need to do is add our tokens here. So right now it's got 101. This is not a spacing token. So we should set a spacing token. Let's say it's 32. So now it should have 32 width. Now we would have to make this fill. There we go. So as you can see, this doesn't leave much space. Let's zoom to 100%. We should do the same here. So let's make sure we have a token on the width. And at the moment our maximum is 32. And let's make sure this fills the space available to it. And as we said before, I think we're going to want to add a new token to make it a little bit bigger. So let's just do that right now. And let's create a new token. Spacer 4XL. I'm going to call this one 64. Now, this is a big jump. And we might want to change that later on, actually, when we do a more logical spacing system. It was linear, now it's going exponential, and there is some logic around that. But because we want to jump in right now and fix this, let's do that. So let's 4XL, there we go. Let's break that apart, and now we're going to add a double space, there we go, and that looks a lot more like it. So now we have some quite decent, clean, tidy login page. We've got our app icon logo, we've got username, password, we can log in, it pops. There's a sign up button, and there's our social. Now we probably want to add a little bit more space above the social, so it's not too tightly packed here. And we can do that the same way as we did the others. Right, so here's our set of forms. Oh, we didn't rename this one. This video is becoming long and I try to keep them to 10 minutes. Okay, here's our form. Now we could easily just move the social out of the form, because frankly it wouldn't actually be in the form. So let's drag it out. Oh, we're in the prototype. We do have to go to our component. This happens all the time, but it's very important we do it this way. So always be aware of that. So now we've reorganized it, and it will inherit the spacing from here, because this is the gap. If we click on login, you'll see the gap is 32. So this is 32, this is 32, and then we have social login there. And later we might want to add some text here to say login with. But there's a lot of work we've got to do on this page to make it beautiful. As soon as I've reached the time limit of this video, I think we should move on. Okay. Let's move on to the next video. Now our login form is looking pretty tidy. We've got to do a couple more things. We have to do a validation pattern, and the goal here is to be able to log in to our app and start designing the app with the design system. So let's get to that.